Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Vandal Theory, a podcast about science and research at University of Idaho. I'm Danae Lenz, External Communications Coordinator at U of I and host of this special summer season, where we're diving into short episodes on research that matters to Idaho. Today, in the last episode of this summer season, we're talking about wildfires and the flammable fuels growing underfoot. Our guest is Alistair Smith, professor and department chair in U of I's Department of Earth and Spatial Sciences. He is collaborating with power companies to figure out which plants are most likely to ignite and what they can do to prevent disaster. By testing how plants burn under different conditions, his team is creating practical tools to help reduce fire risk around the world. Let's get into it. Hi, Alistair. Welcome to the podcast.
A very good day to you.
So you have a really cool new project going on, and I don't want to say too much about it. I will let you introduce it. What is the project?
Thanks for having me on the podcast. The project is I'm working with power and utility companies to help them identify what vegetation underneath their power line right-of-ways are most at risk from igniting causing wildfires. So power line right-of-ways are those gaps that you see where you have the power lines going overhead and there's like a gap in vegetation. And what they're really concerned about is when windstorm comes in, debris falls on the line, ignites, and then that buried debris falls down onto the vegetation.
I think you have a lab. Tell me a bit about the lab.
So we have a combustion lab at the University of Idaho where we can either bring in small plants that are alive and set them on fire, or we can bring in samples of plants and again set them on fire and run through several ignition tests. And so that's what we're doing here. We're going to go to sites across the region, across Idaho, Oregon, Washington, and go to areas where we have these power line right-of-ways and sample the vegetation from underneath the lines and then bring them back to the lab. And then we're going to set them on fire and evaluate which ones are more likely to ignite in different conditions than others.
Okay. And so what are these power companies then going to do with the results that you get them?
Well, what this can allow them to do is we'll be able to tell them that this type of vegetation in this area is most at risk of igniting if burning embers on top of it. That means what they can do is they can go, okay, so if we've got our vegetation field crews going out to reduce this vegetation that's most at risk from igniting, we now know which vegetation it is. They can then make some decisions. They can remove vegetation, trim it down. They can make sure it's nowhere near the power lines. They can add water to it, part into it. They could bury lines, or they could just put concrete down instead of vegetation. This way, whatever they decide to do, they'll hopefully be reducing the risk of a wildfire starting because of those embers lining the vegetation.
How did this come about? Did they identify the problem and come to you, or were you pitching it to them?
It came out a couple of ways. Firstly, I had the opportunity last November to visit the University of Tasmania in Australia because they built a combustion lab a bit like the one we have here at U of I, and they wanted me to see it. And when I was there, they told me, hey, our utility company, TasNetworks, is really concerned about wildfires occurring due to the vegetation near the right-of-ways. Can you talk to them? So I did. And they told me, quite frankly, they're really scared. They know that wildfires occurred due to the debris from the power lines falling down, but they had no idea what vegetation, which vegetation, where, what time of year this could occur. So they really needed help with this information. So my team at the U of I started to actually work with them on it. And while at the same time being on this NASA project called FireSense, where the goal of FireSense is to take NASA data, modeling techniques, and actually pass it to end users like utility and power companies to help them make better decisions around wildfire. And at a meeting that they organized, they introduced me to the chief meteorologist in Portland General Electric. And I asked her, are you interested in this too? And of course, the answer was a resounding yes. So now we're we're not just helping Australia, we're helping utility and power companies within the region as well. We're talking with Portland General Electric, we're talking with other companies that are going to connect us with Vista, Idaho Power, to hopefully bring tools to the region and not just to Australia.
So I'm assuming that probably for as long as power lines have been around, power lines have been the cause of some fires. Is there a reason why this is like front of mind for companies right now?
Unfortunately, we've had some recent wildfire disasters. We had the Camp Fire a few years ago in Paradise in California. That was caused by failure in one of the transmission towers. It broke, and some burning metal and plastic landed on the fuels, which ignited them. Most recently, it looks like that some of the Los Angeles fires may have been caused by branches and the winds falling on the lines that then igniting and causing burning debris to come down and essentially cause a wildfire. The reason these utility and power companies are really concerned about this is that they're increasingly being held liable for this. The cost, the charges that they're getting are enormous. And so, for example, Pacific Gas and Electric in California, they settled for about 15 billion for the Camp Fire. These are huge costs that, would bankrupt most companies and thus are, of great importance to these companies. They're really concerned because they realize that they need to proactively address the situation and get at it.
This is something that obviously it affects Idaho, it affects California, it affects a lot of the world, frankly. What is the impact? Why do we care beyond just, wildfires are bad?
Sure, great question. And I think the best way to answer this is if we look around, where are these power lines? They're not just out in the rural wildland areas. If you look around most of the towns here in the Western United States, we had power lines going right through the center of town. In modern development, housing developments, they're buried, but in many cases they're not. And anywhere that you have vegetation around these power lines, you're at risk of causing a wildfire. And out in the rural and wildland areas, that's one thing. But you can also cause a disaster like you see in California with wildfires starting in these what's called the wildland urban interface. And to put it in context, right now in the United States, 46 million houses are at risk of fires in wildland urban interface, which is a huge number of houses.
What is your most optimistic goal for this research? What do you want it to accomplish?
Yeah, great question. So usually when we do research, kind of pie in the sky, we're like, oh, there might be a solution in 10, 20 years. That's not what we want for this research. And one of the goals of the NASA project, Parsons project, is that the tools and methods that we develop will be operational, as in they will be used to make decisions on the ground by companies by 2028. And so that's the goal of this project. The goal of this project is in 3 years or in 3 fire seasons, we actually want these utility and power companies to be using the output of our research to actually make decisions to help identify what vegetation to potentially mitigate so that they can reduce the risk of wildfires that impact these communities.
That's awesome. I'm so happy that you're working on this. Thank you for being on the podcast. This has been a really fun conversation.
Thank you for having me. This has been great.
Thanks for listening to the Vandal Theory. You can learn more about our research at uidaho.edu/Vandal Theory. Email us at vandaltheory@uidaho.edu. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Danae Lunds. See you in the fall when we return for Season 10 of the Vandal Theory.